want you to listen to me. Remember your brakes and switches. Get ready to fire.
Since the top is coming off, I wanted to up the details on the cockpit. I had printed a real-life racing belt in 1/25 scale for another build and had a spare. It fit the seat perfectly. At the time, I printed the belt on some textured paper I had laying around. The belt was die cut from the paper, the edges were done in Sharpie black, and I even pushed my luck with the buckles and some Tamiya flat aluminum paint. The belt will need to bend so it falls naturally into the seat. To help this happen, I glued the belt to places where it would have been bolted to a real seat. This helped me tuck it into the seat and bend the straps. Boom! That looks pretty good to me. Here's the back with the glue points. Here's the seat installed within the cockpit. The next problem in this build was the fitment issues with the body. The before mentioned dominoes have added up to fight me. I no doubt compounded these issues when I had to trim the body panels to hide the decal breakage. In this image, you can see how close the valve covers are to the top of the body. I had to remove some of my fiberglass texture to accommodate the valve covers. Also, I had to sand the tops of the valve covers down to provide just enough room for everything to fit. The included steering rods in the kit are a cruel joke. They are nowhere close to fitting on my build. The front end fits real nice without the kit steering rod. I'll need to think on this. With my fitment issues in the back of my mind, I changed gears to adding more details. I decided to add bolts to the sides of the cockpit walls. To get them straight, I used a post-it with ruler lines I scribbled on it. The post-it was carefully lined up on the cockpit where the frame tubing is on the other side. I then used canopy glue to attach my bolt heads. Here, the bolt heads are attached and in a nice line. I got the bolts from my stash. I also build armor models, and any unused bolts on the armor plates are sliced off with an X-Acto and put into a baggie. I had to cut my post-it for the tight areas. The next detail to tackle was the parachute. I find it hard to believe that the real car would have a single hinge holding the chute to the chassis, so I started to fab up a tube connection. I vaguely guessed at the angle of the tube, then eyed it against the chassis and started to notch it. The angle is a little off, but I can make this work. After a little more sanding, the tube meets the back of the parachute better. Here's another angle. Also note the small magnets I installed into the body to help the top shell snap into place. I glued the tube to the back of the parachute and let it dry. Next, I wanted to cover the ugly interior steering parts, so I cut out some styrene to fit. Now that the parachute's tube was dry, I painted it black and installed it into the chassis. I then ran a thin red wire to a spare lever I had added to the cockpit. This is the parachute deploy lever. I then installed the painted fire extinguisher after I ran a thin red wire to it. It's got to activate somehow, right? I don't think they had Bluetooth in the 60s. With all that detailing work done, the idea came to me on how to fix the steering rod on the front end. I was going to hack apart the original piece and insert thin wire that I can bend and shape to fit the narrow nose opening. I started with the end links and drilled holes so I can stud the connecting rod on the front end and have a solid foundation to work with. Here's the front end with holes drilled so I can stud them. This is the first try with the steering rod. I had to use styrene tube that was glued to the end links so the wire would have a proper hole to slip into. After some trial and error, I found the bends that should work. It looks a lot like a real car to me. Here's the nose cowl removed so you can see the bend better. You can also see the magnet I installed in the tip of the nose to help pull the cowl down against the steering rod. The steering linkage was another battle. The kit's part was too big for the cowl to fit over. I could make it work if I placed the connector off center, but that looked terrible. So I had to redo the steering linkage with a wire and modified receiver. The receiver is 080 styrene rod with a hole drilled through the middle of it by eye. A lot has happened up to this point, and I appreciate you watching for this long. Here's a little hack I came up with to simulate the Hemi spark plug boots. I take canopy glue and mix it with black acrylic paint until I get this very dark gray goo. This goo is your spark plug boot. Here are the plug wires installed with the goo. The key is to pull the plug wire slightly out after you push it in, so the goo runs up the plug wire, giving you the impression of a boot. During the process, I first test fit the wire into the plug hole. Then I add a bend where the wire is level with the top of the hole. This is where I put a dab of the goo. I then use the tip of a toothpick to add a small drop of the goo to the spark plug hole, then insert the wire to where the goo is at the bend. Next, I pull slightly up and boom, you have a spark plug boot that is passable to the naked eye. Now that the front steering is assembled and chromed, I'm very happy with it. The nose cowl now sits like it should with full suspension installed. A dab of canopy glue will keep it all in place. We are finally at the end. The wheel fairing decals were a nightmare for me, and I had to bail on the inner decals. Fear not, I thought of a solution. It involves clear sticker paper for my laser printer. I thought I could scan in a decent decal, flip it, and print out on the sticker paper. Here's the paper I used. From my experience, anything printed on this paper is very delicate, so it will need clear coating to add durability. My filtered quick shine was the solution. I brushed on a couple of thin coats and let them dry. I printed the graphic with multiple copies because life happens, you know. I then used some of the copies as a paint mask. These copies were not cleared, and you can see how the laser print flakes off of the paper when I cut it with a sharp X-Acto. This is a good angle of the sticker paper acting as a mask. In hindsight, I should have used tape or vinyl for the mask. The adhesive for the sticker paper is permanent and leaves residue when it is removed after painting. Since this stuff is clear, you need to add a white backing so your print has accurate colors. After the white was dry, I removed the mask, cleaned up the adhesive with mineral spirits, and started layering on the clear to make a smooth finish. On the left is my replacement, and on the right is the original decal. It's okay, and will definitely work on the inside of the fairings. Due to the shape of the body and the placement of the engine, I decided to install the headers at this point. I had fabbed up a set of my own that I thought were better than the kit's included ones, but I was wrong. With the engine installed and the body together, they just didn't fit, so I had to use the kit's headers. To improve the headers, because I couldn't just leave them alone, I started by drilling a small hole in as close to the center as I could for each header tube.
Well, that's beautiful.
Some of my holes were off, so I had to use this triangle-shaped pick I bought at a model show years back. I put the triangle end into the hole, then hold it at an angle that compensates for my off-centerness and spin it in my fingers. This creates a subtle cone shape that leads to the pre-drilled hole, while giving the appearance of a centered hole in the plastic. It's a kludge, but it works to my eyes, especially after you paint the inside black. It being an NPC kit, and I deeply believe they have an injector pin fetish, of course, the injector pins are on the visible side of the headers. If you flip the headers over, or swap them to the other side, they will not fit. You really have to install them with the dents facing the judge's eyes. The bastards. To have the proper drop through the body, I did add a slim styrene spacer to the top of the headers. The tube sticking out the bottom looks so cool to me. Thanks again for sticking with this video for so long. It was a lot of work with real-world problems. Here's the completed model.